Hello guys, got another video today. Today I'm going to do a little sort of settings video for Battlefield 6 beta. I've been sort of testing a few things over on the first beta weekend. I've got a few things to share. I really wanted to get some time into the game, figure out the settings. There's a few things to mention. I think that will help you out. Go through some config files, got a few EA app settings to discuss, and then we'll get into the game, do some settings. Get some in-game settings, and there's a lot to mention. I will leave timestamps in the description so you can. I try not to make this video as long as 30-40 minutes here. I try and cut it down as much as I can, but I will leave timestamps in the description so you can skip to whichever part you would like. I know that makes it easy for you, right? And I think we're just going to go straight into it. Right. So firstly, I think we could go your PC. We're going to go into My Documents, and we're going to go into Battlefield 6 Open Beta, Settings, PROFSAVE_profile, click that. We're going to go and say you can use Notepad, that's perfectly fine. And we're going to go into here, and we can change a few things in here that I think might help you out. This is only for PC players, console players. I'm sorry, this you will not be able to do this. It's only PC only. And there are a few things to mention here. So first thing is chromatic aberration. Make sure that is off. There were times where I've noticed that it's been on when I thought it was off. So it's just, it's safer to just do it in here. Obviously, 0 would be off, 1 would be on. That's the same for every setting in here. And yeah, just make sure that's off. Just set it to 0. That'd be perfectly fine. Console anti-aliasing, just set to 0. That's another thing. What else have we got here? This one right here. Now, if you're familiar with Battlefield 5, Battlefield 1, there was a setting that had ADS FOV, so you could have it off or on. I'll leave a little comparison on here so you can see the difference. Now, by default, this is set to off, so it'd be ADS FOV off. So that'd be 0, so you can just quickly change that to 1, and you'll have ADS FOV on. That's a little tip for you. The FOV in this game is slightly different to older titles, I've noticed. Now in this file here it goes by vertical FOV, but in game it goes by horizontal FOV. And I've noticed it's a bit different from Battlefield 5 or 2042. The vertical, it doesn't match up like a 1-for-1 scale, so you can change your FOV in here. So I play on 105, I think, in this game, and it actually looks like vertical is actually lower than in Battlefield 5. It'd be 79, but in this game it's 73. So you can change your vertical. So if your FOV is in Battlefield 5 2042, you can change it in here, and it will. Like I said, the FOV is slightly different in this game, so you might need to lower it, or but we'll talk about that later. Film grain turn off just to be safe. One more setting, and I have actually made a video about this very recently, so you might have seen it, you might not have seen it, but it's weapon depth of field. So you get so it's setting essentially what it does, it just has like a blur effect around the weapon. I think it's sort of very personal preference. I prefer to have it off, just because I find it very distracting. But you can turn it off in here, and it's not an in-game setting, which is a shame. I'd like to see that in a game setting, but this is how to do it. Like I said, 0 is off, 1 is on. You just turn it off here, and you have no sort of blur effect over your weapon. And I think that's all I want to mention. I'm going to move over, try and make a config file in Battlefield 6 beta. So first thing, you want to go into your folder where you have Battlefield 6 beta installed. So I have it on my M.2 on my E drive. So you just click in there. Go Origin Games, Battlefield 6 event. You come down here. This is a user config I use, so I can have the FPS counter in the top left. It's the same as your 2042 config. So this is pretty much, I just copy and pasted it from my 2042 config, and it will work. I would say there's one little thing. This is from my settings. I play at 2560 by 1440p, so 1440p. As you can see, I leave a little screenshot up. You can see that in the top left, that's where my FPS counter is. If you play it like 1080p or a different resolution, anything other than 2560 by 1440, it will not match up. Okay, so this is if you play at my 1440p, this will be the same. You may have to tweak these values here. Perf overlay offset on the x-axis and the y-axis, and you might have to little play with it. One other thing about the config is, if you're very familiar with Battlefield 5 or Battlefield 2042, there's a light tile CS path enable. You do get a nice little FPS boost there. One thing to mention, it does sort of mess about with like the appearance of your characters in the menus. Just leave a little screenshot up there to show you what it's like. It will sort of darken everything in the game, but in game you will get sort of a nice boost, like from I've measured in Battlefield 5 and Battlefield 2042, your 0.1s, 1% lows will be higher. So I'd say generally it's probably recommended to have this turned off, and this will be in your config file when you boot up the game. So if you can use that, please do. And anyway, I'm going to show you how to make the config. So say, I will leave these in the description, so you can just copy and paste. And it's like, this is how to make a config file. So say you've got that, you've put it in Notepad, you're in your game's file directory where your game is installed. Go boom, save as. Go down to here and you go all files, click all files, type user, and you type user.cfg, boom, save it. That should be a user config file, and you should know if you've done it right, because it would say down at the bottom user, and it'll be under a file type, it will be a CFG file, and that's when you know you've done it right. Next time when you boot the game, you should have the FPS in the top left, and then a little FPS boost with the light tile path. Right, so there's one more thing to mention before we jump into Battlefield 6 and talk about settings and stuff like that. It's through the EA app. Now, if you're on Steam, this isn't a problem. EA app, you don't need it for the Steam version of the Battlefield 6 beta, so you probably won't have this problem, I would assume. But if you are playing the game through the EA app, there's one big setting that you need to know about. And you come down here and it's the in-game overlay. Make sure this is on. I would leave some footage in the background of the reason why. There's a huge sort of stuttering issue if you have this off. Now, generally, sort of in previous games, you would turn this off because you get better performance, less stuttering, that sort of thing. Now, maybe this might be different at launch of Battlefield 6, but for the time being, for Battlefield 6 in beta, please keep this on. You'll get a lot more FPS, and you can see from the video is reason why you turn it on. So please keep it on. And I think we're going to go into the settings of Battlefield 6 beta. Here we are in the settings menu of Battlefield 6. I'll try to be as quick as I can. There's a lot to mention here. Some things I've noticed, some observations, and just going to go straight into it. Enable menu narration. I'll just turn that off. Enable subtitles. For me, I don't really, not for multiplayer games, I wouldn't typically enable subtitles. For single player games, like subtitles are great, I think, generally. Volume, color presets. See, I've left this on default. Now, normally I use Pro 10, but at the minute, I just quite like the default settings, honestly. Brightness. Now, I would leave brightness setting at the default value. There are a few sort of like visibility issues in this game where, say, if you're like looking out of a building, it's very bright, and then some instances of where you are sort of running into buildings, it's very dark. So I would say, for the minute, just don't play about with the brightness. I think just leave it a default setting of like 50. I think you'll be good to go. I think if you start playing about with that, you might make it, it's a good sort of mid ground between, them sort of areas where that sort of visibility issue do occur. Camera effects, motion blur 0, weapon motion blur 0, soldier HUD motion off, camera shake off to 20%, chromatic aberration. Like I said, I did mention in the config file, make sure this is off, because I've noticed at times it appears like it's on when it should be off. So if you change the config file, like I said earlier, it will be permanently off. infantry crosshair projection. So I'd generally say turn this off. When this is enabled, the crosshair sort of floats to help with sort of like motion sickness and stuff like that, but you know, you really want to be knowing where your crosshair is and you want it static, so I would say turn this off please if you can. Controls, hold and toggle. So this is where all your like infantry sprint, I like it on click or like toggle. Crouch slide, toggle sprint, crouch toggle, interact. I don't think there's anything to mention here that I've noticed. Infantry is like ADS. When you're in ADS, when you hold, I have it on hold. Vehicle as well. Steady scope is hold. I think we're good. Controller vibration. This is basically PC stuff, but you know, I'd say if you are a controller player, I would say probably turn off vibration honestly, and to turn it off and then set it to 0. I think it can sort of mess about with your aim sometimes if you have sort of vibration on, from my experience of playing on console and stuff. Chat to speech, turn off. Menu tutorials. I'd say generally, like as we get more experienced in Battlefield 6, I think you'll probably turn these off, or the tutorials, but I would say just because it's a beta, I'd say turn them on so you get familiar with the game, understand how things work. So I'd say keep them on, as well as all these hints, you know, control hints, action prompts. I'd say keep them on for the minute so you can understand and learn the game. I'd say quite advisable. Right, so I think we're going to go into gameplay. Invert, this is where you do, you know, if you do play inverted, there you go. You can change it there. Capture area outline. Now I think this is where when you're on flags, you get this sort of like, I've noticed when I've been playing over the weekend, you can actually see like the outline of where the capture flag is. And I would say generally, you know, as like I said, you know, it's beta, we're still learning the game, so I'd say just keep this on so you can understand where to stand in relation to capping a flag. I'd say keep it on. Infantry aim sensitivity, and I think this is the controller sensitivity. I set that to 0 because I don't want any interference, like if there is any, like especially after 2042, I don't want any like controller settings interfering with like mouse input, just safe to say. You know, infantry mouse aim sensitivity. Now, this is where you put your sensitivity in. Now, this is a lot different. See, in Battlefield 5, Battlefield 1, 2042, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong there. But this is different to in them games I played at 7. This you may have to tweak about with this, and like I said, you know, I kind of like this move. The distances for a 360. I think that's going to be a feature that will show you your sensitivity, so you don't have to measure it yourself. You can just adjust it, and that will change on the fly. I think that's really cool. I think that's a really cool setting, to be honest. But for the time being, you might need to get out your tape measure and just measure your hip fire sense. You can do it in the test range. Just use like a door or a light switch, use that as a reference, and then just measure your sensitivity going around in hip fire and then in ADS. The ADS setting is somewhere down here. It's not in the same menu for some reason. I don't know why. I think it's the settings menu is quite confusing here, so we might probably go into it again, like talking about sensitivity. But yeah, make sure you might have to measure your sense to get your sensitivity, so it's a lot higher than previous games. I think that should be working in future iterations of the game at launch, maybe. Double tap forward sprint. I don't really like that. Crouch toggle sprint door, landing roll. Double tap crouch for a sprint slide. I use that. I'm used to that in Battlefield 5, so I use that. Landing roll, quite similar to Battlefield 5 again, you know, where you jump off sort of a more higher place. When you land, you can sort of go into a roll animation. So, you know, keep that on if you can. Mount breakout. Interact and reload. I think that's sort of personal preference. I'd probably say, for me, I sort of prioritize reload because I think, yeah, I'd say for now probably prioritize reload. I might have to come back to that. Inventory visibility I'll show. I think that might be as like a battle royale setting maybe. Vehicle sensitivity, I generally go a bit higher than my like infantry sensitivity, just because it might be sort of generally beneficial to have that slightly higher. And I'm not really a vehicle player. I will sort of put my hands up and say, you know, I only use tanks generally. Infantry aim assist, as a PC player I've just turned it on to 0, just like I said, in case there's any interference with the game from 2042 maybe. Controller settings, like I said, this is mainly PC video, so I haven't tested any controller settings. Actually, that goes as well for aim assist. I haven't tested any aim assist in this game as of yet. There's a lot of PC stuff to go through, so maybe in future iterations of a settings video I may sort of look into that. Right, so here we go. Like I said, I mentioned aim sensitivity before, slightly higher than before. Control settings. So this is where we have uniform soldier aiming. Or in this game it's called uniform infantry aim. If you're not familiar what this setting does, it sets the game so you have the same sensitivity across every sight. So it doesn't matter if it's a 1x, a 2x, 3x, 4, whatever, they're all the same sensitivity. So you'll generally say keep uniform soldier aiming on. If I play a coefficient of 133, some players say 178 coefficients, some players say, you know, it's 0 is the best. I think generally it doesn't really matter from my experience of playing at different zoom coefficients in previous games. I would say just give them a go, you know, just copy your settings from previous games, and I think we'll be good to go. And obviously you can go down a rabbit hole and, you know, test each setting. You know, I would always say, you know, test your settings, test different coefficients, see which one you like better. I would always say that. But I'd say just copy your sensitivity from previous games. FOV, like I sort of mentioned previously, I think the FOV is slightly different in this game than in sort of previous Battlefield games. Obviously it goes by the horizontal field of view in this game, and I think vertically it's slightly different as well. So if I play at 105 horizontal field of view, I am at 73 vertical. So in the equivalent in Battlefield 5, I played at 79 vertical and 95 horizontal. So the FOV is slightly different here. I can tell that by like I mentioned earlier, in the config file, profile save sort of config file, it's slightly different. So I'd say you might have to play about with this. I'd say generally 105 to like 90, 105, 110, I think you'll be good to go, honestly. I would say after sort of having this experience in this game, I think FOV is very subject to what type of game it is. I would say this is a very fast-paced game, so it might be beneficial to sort of slightly lower your FOV maybe. But at the same time, because of the FOV is different in this game, you might have to up it a bit to get it similar to previous games you've played. So I'd say, you know, anything like 105, 95 to 105, I think you'll be perfectly fine, honestly. And I would say, just from my recent testing from a previous video I've done quite recently, you do get an FPS boost, a slight FPS boost at sort of higher FOVs. So that's something to think about. Not necessarily like I would say you really want to run max FOV, but you know, it's something to be aware of. Infantry sprint, click. I have that on click. Double tap. There's a lot of the same settings in the same menu in this game. So I might be repeating myself over and again. So I'm sorry if I'm sort of repeating myself. Left shift, crouch, toggle sprint. Bolt over, sprint, yeah, slide, I have that on mouse 3 button, that's what I'm just used to it. I'm just used to how that works. Infantry zoom, steady scope, infantry zoom sensitivity. So this is your ADS speed, and this is where you would alter. So at 100, that should be you know, 32 centimeters for a 3.6 for my sensitivity. It should be exactly the same as your hip fire in ADS, and then 100 would be that vertical mouse aim ratio. I would leave this again, leave it to 100. I wouldn't necessarily say mess about with this setting because this again messes with the values of your X and Y axis. So just leave that setting at 100%. That means your hip fire, your X and Y axis are exactly the same if you went into a circle sort of thing. Parachute, skip, revive, interacts off. Yeah, there's not really a lot to mention now. Right, where are we? Bear with me. These settings are kind of tricky. Infantry keybinds. Here we go. So this is where you do keybinds, right? So everything for me is pretty much default, but this is where you do it. It's got a weapon inspect, weapon inspect. I kind of like that. I haven't tried that actually yet. The only thing I've changed is, I'd say you might want to get rid of these actually on the. I think that's good practice. It's good that I've noticed that right now actually. Get rid of that so it's just on your mouse, you know. Anything else? Crouch toggle I have on mouse free, and left control. It's just whatever for myself. It's just whatever's convenient at the time. I can use either, you know, and slide and stuff. Prone I have on mouse 4. You can set that. Slide mouse free again, like I said. Secondary weapon I have mouse scroll wheel down so I can scroll to my left, like my sidearm, sorry. And that's pretty much it. Everything else is it's pretty much default. Steady scope, I don't really like. I don't use steady scope, so I've turned it off. But you know, I'd say probably keep that on if I was you, honestly. But you know, it's all personal preferences. That's great about Battlefield. You can change settings and stuff. Vehicle mouse aim sensitivity. So this would be your ADS sense, like whilst in a tank or something. Actually, that needs to go up. That needs to match my, was it about 10.5, I think. Yeah, so make sure that's the same as your tank. Like I said, the menu's quite hard in this game. Control settings, aircraft, uniform vehicle aiming. That's the same as like USA. Uniform soldier aim. Actually, that needs to be on. That's off by default, I think. Vehicle boost. I'm not really like I said, I'm not really a vehicle player, so I'm probably not the best to ground vehicle, transport, aircraft, helicopters, gunners. UI keybinds. So it's keybinds here. I think everything's default for me. Sorry. Advanced settings. Mouse input on. You want to keep this on. It's quite important. Flick look. I think that's more of a controller setting. Quite an odd controller setting, I think. But a discussion for another day, I think. Now we're in the graphics menu of the settings. For me, I have it on custom. Graphics, I pretty much have everything on low or turned off. Just because it's quite a hard game it's quite a hard game to run, this game, Battlefield 6. Although I haven't had any crashes or anything, issues like that, so generally it does run quite well for a beta, I would say, but it's quite demanding, this game. And I recommend, just for now, I think everything on low looks kind of good. It looks kind of good, to be honest. It's very sort of CPU heavy, so there might be situations where a lot of you are in CPU bound scenarios. You can typically see if you have sort of quite low GPU usage, quite high CPU usage, that's typically a sort of CPU bottleneck. If you don't have a high-end CPU, you might be sort of coming into issues like that. Just to let you know. Like I said, brightness 50%, just leave that for reasons mentioned earlier. Sort of visibility issues in buildings or coming out of buildings, I'd go keep that at 50%. Sharpness, I'll just keep that at 50% for the minute. We're going to advanced settings. Fixed resolution scale, so I play at 2560 by 1440p. 100 would be 2560 by 1440p. If you can sort of increase the resolution scale or sort of lower it a bit, I think generally it's just better just to have it on, just to have it at say 100. Frame rate limiter, you can sort of frame rate cap yourself, which might be a good thing to do, just to avoid the GPU bound scenarios where you get sort of big, huge, you get a lot of sort of input lag issues when you're in GPU bound scenarios like 90, 98 above. You could sort of limit your frames maybe, but I'd say just have it off. NVIDIA Reflex Low Latency, I just have this enabled. I typically in a lot of games I just have enabled, just so, like we talked about earlier, like sort of GPU bound scenarios can just reduce your system latency and stuff. Let's just say at least have this enabled, enabled plus boost maybe. The next setting, anti-aliasing. Now we've sort of been kind of waiting for this for quite a while. In the last 2 Battlefield games you haven't really been able to have a toggleable setting in game to turn off the anti-aliasing, and yeah, so you can turn it off and it looks quite nice. Obviously if you want, you could turn it to TAA if you want, but I would have it off honestly. Upscaling technique, I'd say you could try DLSS quality. I think for me, anything lower than that, the visual clarity really sort of starts to degrade, and I don't really like it. I'd rather play it like native res, honestly, to be honest. But you could try that 100%. Frame generation, I would generally, for FPS games, I would say probably not use that. If you're playing like single player games and you want more FPS, I would say have that on, but deal with the input lag. I don't really like the input lag even in single player games, but you kind of get used to it over time, but for FPS games, competitive shooters, I'd say have that off, because the input lag can, although you get technically higher FPS, the input lag's just it's not as good, man. I'd just try and avoid using that if you can. Next one is future frame rendering. This is something I've tested quite a lot in previous titles, and there used to be a huge FPS gain, and say in Battlefield 5 you turn this on, because the difference would be like 100 FPS, and just by having more frames, you would sort of negate the input lag issue that you had by having it on, just because you're getting so much FPS gain. Sorry if I can talk correctly. But in this game, because from what I've tested, there doesn't seem to be working or any FPS gain from here. I think it's something that maybe doesn't work in the X12, I think. So I'd say just have it off. When you have it on, it sort of increase input lag, getting no FPS gain. It's like, what's the point? Just have it off, you'll be good to go. Performance overlay, I just have it on simple, but because I have the config file, as you can see in the top left, my FPS in the top left, I wouldn't mess about with this if you're using a config file, because it may interact with it might mess up that config file, so I'll leave that as that is. It's simple. Right, so this is where you can again sort of adjust your field of view. I guess this is probably like the main area where you would adjust your FOV, and like I said before, this settings menu is quite, I've sort of I'm sorry if I'm sort of repeating myself, but yeah, so I'm just going to go through it again just in case people want to skip to the FOV section and they might have missed that I've mentioned it like 2 or 3 times before, but I'm sorry if that's annoying if you've watched all the way through. But for the people who haven't seen, yeah, this is where you'd probably the most easiest way to change the field of view setting in this game. Like I said, like I sort of mentioned before, in the config file, so this game kind of goes different. It does it on the horizontal field of view. So in previous games you do it vertically, but in this one I would like a little vertical setting there, just to say, we have the horizontal here, but we have the vertical FOV here as well. And I think just from looking in the config file, like I mentioned earlier, the vertical, the FOV in this game is not sort of 1-for-1 as in previous games. So I usually play in Battlefield 5, I play 79 vertical and then 95 horizontal, but 95 horizontal in this game is not the same, and my field of view here is 105, but vertically it would be 73. So really I might need to turn it up a bit. So you might have to play about with this setting to try and match it to your sort of previous one. So you might be sort of running a lower vertical FOV than you might think, so you may need to take it up a bit as well. A few things to mention about FOV as well. I think the way this game plays, I don't think it's a very fast-paced Battlefield game. Correct me if I'm wrong, but with more time with the game, you know, I could probably have more observations on the field of view and how the game plays and what would be a better field of view. But for my first impressions, I don't think this is a very fast-paced Battlefield game. So I'd say generally it might be favourable to sort of run a lower FOV. Generally, so I would say anywhere between 95, like 90 and 105, maybe 110. I think you'll be good to go, honestly. And from a previous video that I've made quite recently, you do actually get a nice FPS boost when you run sort of higher FOVs. Not necessarily that you'd want to run a higher FOV, but I just thought I'd bring it up. You do get an FPS boost, like in Battlefield 5 from my own testing, when you do run higher FOVs. Yeah, so you may need to play about with the FOV because it's not a one-for-one than in previous games. Excuse me, vehicle first-person, third-person field of view. I have that on 79. I haven't really sort of played a lot of vehicle games, but I might need to tweak it up to 105. What else? Weapon field of view. So this is the difference of how your weapon looks. Generally, I set this to wide because it says here, selecting narrow will make the weapon appear bigger on screen, while the wider will make it smaller. Now, I don't really want a lot of like the visual space that the weapon takes up on the screen. I think it's better to have it wide so it's smaller, you know. Just that sort of screen space is just to make the weapon smaller, I would have thought. Again, this is another area where you can adjust the motion blur. Motion blur 0, weapon motion blur 0, camera shake amount 20, chromatic aberration, like I mentioned earlier, make sure that's off in the config, because I've had times where this has been on when it should have been off. But if you do it in a config at the start of the video, that should be off all the time. Again, Vignette, I'm not sure if that's saying it right. Off, film grain off, full screen. I'd say it's probably generally full screen. I have heard people say may try borderless. I haven't detected any FPS gain there, to be honest. I would say just stick with full screen, and I think you'd be good to go. Set your monitor here, your screen resolution, whatever that is, 1080p, aspect ratio 16:9, refresh rate, VSync. I say generally turn off VSync. Generally, it sort of helps with like input lag and stuff like that. There may be some use cases for VSync, but I'd say generally just sort of turn it off. Show HUD, keep that on. Soldier HUD, overlays, Sovis filter. I think this setting does like a sort of halo effect around soldiers. Sometimes you can see it like quite evidently. I think have this on. Make sure this setting is on. Advanced HUD settings. Horizontal padding, you can sort of tighten the HUD a bit on this setting, so you might want to have a little play about with that in game if you can. Kill feed, icons on, minimap size, everything's I think pretty much default. Default is pretty good, honestly. There's nothing else I can really mention in there, to be honest. I think everything else is default. Go back to graphics, icon intensity. So that'd be like the map flags and stuff like that. HUD icons, hints, yeah. I think everything's default here. For the beta, I think it'd be fine. With time at launch, I'd probably be sort of tweaking them settings. But for the beta, we're just running about enjoying ourselves. I think just leave that at the default, honestly. Crosshairs and indicators. Crosshair opacity, crosshair intensity. Crosshair color. I have changed my color just because something I've noticed in this game is I I tend to perform better, or I have a better time when I change my crosshair color. So change it whatever to color that really sort of stands out for you. This is what I have. Crosshair thickness, I think by default it's just on the default setting. It's quite small. It's quite small. It's quite hard to see. Sort of like your crosshair. So you really want to be sort of seeing where your crosshair in this game, because hipfire is quite good in this game. So you really want to sort of have that point of reference. So I'd recommend having it on thick if you can. Infantry crosshair projection, like I mentioned before. You want your crosshair static. You don't want it floating about. It's, you know, to just get rid of that. Hit indicator opacity, 100%. Intensity. Hit color. I have my hit markers as white. Headshot color. It's quite similar to my Battlefield 5 settings actually. I'd say generally in FPS games you want to know that you've done a headshot on somebody, because usually you can push them, because then you know they're low health, and so I'd have headshot color. Just make it a very sort of vibrant color that so you know that you've had a headshot on someone. I tend to use like a bright green or a bright yellow, something like that. Is what change it about a bit. That's what I have. Kill color, so that'd be your kill confirmed. So when you've got a kill, you get a little hit mark and say, yeah, the kill's gone. So it could be good in sort of target prioritization and when to move off from targets and stuff like that. That's a good setting to have. So I would say, but whatever stands out for you, you know, it's why Battlefield's good. You can set anything to anything, you know. The sort of customizability in Battlefield games are generally really good, and a very positive thing. So I'd set that, you know, I've run sort of like pink, like a pink color sometimes, very easy to see. Like I said, personal preference, customize that to what you want. Damage number enabled. So this setting is, you can see the damage numbers just right to the left of your weapon when you're shooting people, so you can see how much damage is done. This is a setting I've been tweaking about with this for a bit. So you can, I would have it on number opacities 100. This setting here, damage number size, I think it's either on small or medium. I think it might be on small as a default setting. I can't remember. Yeah, going by the setting there, I think it's on small. It's very hard to see, so you might not know that you're doing damage to people a lot of the time. And I would set that to large so you can really see how much damage you're doing to people. Now, something else I've noticed, there is a bug. I'm not sure if it's a bug or I'm reading the numbers wrong, but there are certain times where it's reading the numbers wrong, and it's sort of like I'm getting like a lot of 120, 107 damage. Now I've sort of looked into this, and I think technically it's right. The damage number is right, but it's sort of, it needs to stop at 100 damage, you know. So I think it's technically right, but I think there's a bug there where they need to cap the damage at 100, so that you know you've got the kill at 100, because it's counting like you've done too much damage, but really it's correct in a way. So yeah, keep that at large so you can see what damage you're doing to people. Chat visibility, I have it on just when active. I did mess about with the size, so I made it really small so it goes in the top left. Opacity about 70. I put that on the lowest setting I can, so it's right in the top. And enable all chat indicator, so you know which sort of, like which path you're in, like squad or all squad or team, you know. Audio, let's go into the audio. Now I've just been trying headphones here. I've sort of been messing about with a few, like the default mix, high dynamics. I haven't tried night modes, tried war tapes. War tapes, it's a new setting at VAL. I think I just prefer the default mix. I mean, I think it's not really, I haven't really made any observations. I think it's something I need to spend more time with. I haven't really made any observations here, but I think the audio mix type is, I just stick it to default. I think the footsteps in this game very, very hard to hear. So I don't think there's a particular setting where you're going to get an advantage, I would say. So the sound system, quickly going back to that, I use headphones. Some people say stereo is really good, so headphones or stereo on the default mix, I think, you know, you'll be good to go. Music, usually that's 110, but just to record this video I've set it to 0. Hit indicators, you can turn the hit indicators off or on. I like them on. Enable voice chat, I usually have that off. Subtitles again off. Enable radios, I have that on. Maybe that could be like a battle royale setting, maybe, I don't know, we'll see. Show player created content, command console. Actually, this is good. You want this command console on, because if I just get it up here, it brings up the command so you can test light tile path thingy. When you have that off, you will not be able to get that command console. I say generally have that on. It's very useful. Streamer mode, I'm testing this out. I have like anonymous mode on, but I'd like to see other names in the server, so I'm using off on. You're more than welcome to, just turn it off. Enable minimap size, again, it's just pretty much default settings. I like the rotation, so I have the rotation on. Where are we? Share usage data, scoreboard ping, so this is where you see other players ping, and I think default this is turned off, so you want to see your ping and other people's ping. Please use this setting, turn that on. Enable voice, I don't have that off. Network graph, yeah, I'll turn the network widgets on, because you see here I think it just turns it on just so you can show what's going on here, but I would say just have that on at minimum. Network graph, you can have the network graph on, it's like similar to 2042. You can put that on, it's quite nice, honestly. I would say maybe could have it on the bottom. That's very, very picky thing to mention. Here's where you operate the performance, if you want to see your bullets regging and stuff like that. It might be a good thing actually to have this on in the beta, because if there's any sort of instances of no reg and stuff, you could have it on. Obviously you can change the position here, vertical like that, background opacity, play about with it. It might be a good thing to have at least some of this on, if to be honest, but that's where you can do it. And system, is there anything else to mention? Extras, no legal stuff. I think that's it. I think that's it for the video. Hopefully there's a lot to, obviously, within time, I've only had one weekend with settings, and very experienced as I am in Battlefield 5 in 2042, there's still some settings here I'd like to play with, so hopefully there's some stuff in here that can help you out. I'm sorry if I was repeating myself a lot for certain settings. There's a lot of the same settings in the same menu. Yeah, so I apologise for that. Hopefully this video is not too long. Like I said, I've left timestamps in the description in the video, so you can skip to which one whenever you want. Yeah, hopefully it's helped you out. Subscribe if you haven't already. Like the video if you haven't already. It'd be very much appreciated. Trying to grow in Battlefield 6, grow this channel. You very much appreciate. Thank you for watching. If you're watching to the end, you watched all the way through, I appreciate it, I really do. Thank you. I'm sorry if it's a long one. Yeah, thanks for watching. I will see you boys in the next one.